Hey, welcome to the Art Workshop. My name is Christopher Epling. I'm your host. Thanks for tuning into Pike TV today. We really appreciate your interest and hope that you get a lot from the program today. Now, as you know, Pike TV really specializes in bringing local information, stories, different types of assets to you at home so that you're able to check it out. And one of these things that we really want to provide for you is not only art techniques and lessons with simple basic drawing skills using different mediums, but also we want to incorporate a little history about our county and our region, and that's what today's episode is about. We live in Pike County. That's the name of the county. The county seat's Pikeville. Of course, everyone knows that, but a lot of people really don't know where Pike County got its name. Why do we call it Pike County? In today's show, what we're going to be doing, we're going to actually investigate this a little bit together, and then once we learn about why it's called Pike County and why that's the name that was chosen, then we're going to actually draw something and use different mediums to explore that even deeper. So I guess before we really need to talk about what is behind the name Pike County and why it's there. Now, actually, Pike County was founded in December 19th in 1821, and the county was named for a general. His name was Zebulon Pike. He was an explorer. He discovered what's known as Pike's Peak. Between 1860 and 1891, everyone knows the Hatfield-McCoy feud raged in Pikeville and bordering Mingo County. And on May 6, 1893, Pikeville officially became a city in the county seat. Now, Zebulon Montgomery Pike, he was born in 1779. He died in 1813. He was a brigadier general. He explored Colorado and all over the West. And as a U.S. Army officer, he led expeditions. And one of those came through our region. And that was in 1821 that Pike actually came through this region and discovered what's now Pike County and the mountains here. Now, Zebulon Pike is really well known out west. There's a children's book even actually produced that tells us his story and his expeditions. You could think of him as similar to maybe Daniel Boone. So now we know where Pike County got its name and Pikeville got its name, Brigadier General Zebulon Pike. So we're going to try now, since we have that information, we're going to draw something today based on Zebulon Pike. And the image that we showed you earlier, the portrait, the drawing, the painting, excuse me, that is what we're going to try to draw. So now if you know anything about the art workshop, you know that we use these skill sets that incorporate circles and building a drawing from the ground up. A lot of people get intimidated when they look at a blank piece of paper. They look at this blank piece of paper and they're like, well, okay, now how do I turn this into whatever it is I'm envisioning or whatever it is I want to draw? And we want to keep it simple. You use simple shapes and you create it from the ground up. And that's what we're going to do today. I have an example actually of something I've been working on since we're talking about Pikeville. This is a future print that I'm going to be producing and made available, and what this is a print of, if you could tell, that's Main Street. Now this isn't finished, as you can see up here. This is the blue pencil line that completes the tower, but if you know anything about Pikeville, you could tell, hopefully you could tell, this is Main Street, right? And in Main Street, we have this wind-up dinosaur who's walking across. Now, when this is finished, it will all be colored digitally, and it's going to be offered as a print. You can get this print, and the name of this print is going to be called Fossil Fuel. Now, if you look at this closely, though, you see these lines that are behind everything, so the ink is actually on top of the pencil lines. The blue up here at the tower really shows that. That's building a drawing from the ground up. And in order for us to do that today, we're going to be building Zebulon Pike's features from the ground up as well. So don't get intimidated by the blank space. Now, what I have is two different types of paper today, and you can tell by the color there's a little bit of a difference, but you can also tell if you were to feel it. This is thick. It's very thick paper. This is watercolor paper. This is thin. This is copying paper, what you would use in a copying machine. Now, the reason I have these two different types of paper is that I want to actually sketch out what I'm going to be drawing before I ever start on the watercolor. Now, remember the feature that we saw. Basically, what we have is a circle here, which makes up the head. And then we have, of course, the neck, which you can't see very well, so we can draw that in almost like another circle. Then what we have is the shoulders, making up Zebulon Pike. And if you can tell, if you can imagine and use your imagination, you can kind of see that's a person. You can kind of imagine this to be a head, you can imagine this to be shoulders. Now if I showed you this without telling you that, you may not get it right off. You may take you a second, but then eventually you'll say, hey, that kind of resembles the features of a head and shoulders. But what we want to do too, and if you want to check out past episodes, you can, and I encourage you to go do that, because past episodes deal with things such as perspective and drawing facial features and things of that nature. But in those videos, you'll learn that we draw a line going down the center of the face. And this is where the nose is, the eyes, and the mouth. This is the center of the face. This line helps to actually tell us where things are going to be placed in our drawing. So we'll actually draw a line for where the eyes will go. We'll draw another line for where the nose is, and then one more for the mouth. Now the ear is usually straight across from the eyes. We learn this in our tutorials. You should know that. So this is our basic layout for the design we're going to be drawing. I know that doesn't look nothing like Zebulon Pike yet, but hopefully by the time we're finished it will. So grab a pencil, grab a piece of paper, and follow along with me. Now I like to talk before I ever start about the tools I'm using. Today I'm going to be using a couple things that really hopefully will bring out the drawing. These are basic graphite water pencils. So what that means is each one of these pencils has a different hue or a different intensity with the graphite. So some of these are very dark, some are very light. Now the neat thing about these water pencils is that once you sketch with them, you can take a brush or an aqua brush, some sort of water, and you can actually move the graphite around, almost like a watercolor. So we're going to be using these. Now I know a lot of you probably do not have these at home, and that's perfectly fine. It's not something usually kept around unless you're really into art. But you can use your pencil and draw the basic features with me, and then at the end, if you do have something like watercolor at home, you can use that and actually sketch your drawing out. So we're going to start out with drawing our basic shape. So our basic shape again is that circle. Now you can see I'm pressing down very light. You can see at home maybe that this is very, very light. It's a lot lighter than our original little sketch. The reason I do that is these are basic foundation lines. These will be erased. So this is the face, and the face of course comes down the center of the head here, right? So we always want to keep that in mind. The center of the face is going to be down like this, okay? This looks like an egg almost, doesn't it? Like an egg, and then you draw this line on the side. That's where the center of the face will go. The next shape you're going to be making is for the neck. Now he has this massive jacket on, this big Brigadier General outfit. He's really all decked out in the painting. So the only thing we need to do is just make sure we have the area drawn of where the neck will go. So it's something about right there. All it is just, it looks like the letter C upside down on the end of our egg. So we have an egg and we have an upside down letter C now. Now we're going to work on the shoulders. The shoulders just come off of this on each direction, all right, on both sides like this. Now, like I said, his uniform his collar comes up very high on his neck. So we're going to be working on that in a little bit. But we have our basic foundation. This is like when you're building a home, you start from the ground up, and that's what we've done. We have our basic foundation. Now what we want to do is go back into the drawing and start putting features in. Now in order to do features, we have to know where these features are going to appear. And just like I said earlier, we have to mask this out and plan for it. Drawing is in steps. You don't just sit down and sketch something perfectly the first time. You have to plan for these things. So what we have here is a line for the eyes, a line for where the nose will be, and the line for where the mouth will be. Now the ear, like I said, comes straight across from the eyes usually, so about right here. Now that we have all of these things in line, we can start actually building our drawing. I'm going to start with the forehead, so I'm coming down with the forehead, down to the eyes. This is where the eyes will be, so you're drawing this line coming down to where the eyes will be. It comes in and back out. This is the chin, so you can see how the chin's starting to form now. Now the nose, Zebulon Pike has a very predominant nose, so his nose actually comes out like this and in. He has a big nose, so that's okay. We'll draw it just exactly how it is. So there we go. The nose comes out from these lines and down, right? Below that now we're going to work on his mouth. So it comes out and the chin is here. So this is our basic structure now for Zebulon Pike's face. We have the side of the head coming down, his nose, and his chin. Now we're going to return back up to the top of the drawing where we started. Now we're going to work on the hair. Now his hair actually comes over and it's folded over, not folded, excuse me, combed over, and it comes down the side of the head like this, and then he has these curls like, I don't know what it is. I guess it's popular in the time, right? But for instead of sideburns, the hair kind of comes out like that. And then the ear is right here. All right, we're going to draw the ear inside here, get it drawn. All right, there we go. So the ear comes off of the hair and down and in. Now you can see I'm building on top of that egg shape. I'm not going too far away from it. I'm not really drawing the egg shape as it appeared, but this sort of follows the same shape, and that's what we really want. We want to build it from the ground up. Drawing is all about taking your time and working and building on top of your drawing. So now we put in the feature for the ear. We draw these lines coming down like that, and then of course the line here inside. Now the hair in the painting, you can't really see much of the hair. I looked for different photographs or images of Zebulon Pike, and I found a few. Some were very helpful in understanding his features, some were not. So his hair is parted on the side. So this means that it's going to come up and it's going to be folded, coming over. I want to keep saying folded for his hair for some reason. But it's combed over like this. He has a very predominant forehead and a very predominant nose. So far what we've done is laid out everything except for the eyes. And now the eyes of course will be here and here. A lot of folks have a lot of trouble drawing eyes. I want to keep it simple. This isn't a portrait of him. That we're not trying to do a realistic image. We're trying to do something that resembles this in a fashion that would not fit really cartooning, but somewhere in between realism and cartooning. The eyes are going to be here, so we're going to put a circle here for the eye, one eye, another circle for the other eye. So we have both his pupils drawn in now. Now we're going to put his eyebrow. His eyebrows actually come up and down like this on each side. Okay, now to add a little bit more feature to the eye, you can put this little line on each side to help show where the eyelid is. And then maybe a couple lines here. I mean, after all, he is an explorer. I'm pretty sure he's pretty tired after all those expeditions, right? Now we're going to come down. His nose is very predominant. He has a big nose. If you've seen any images of Zebulon Pike, you know. Now we're going to work on his mouth. So you start on the side here. You draw a little hash line just underneath the nose, right here. And then you're going to draw a line that comes over and up. All right, so we have the basic features drawn. His chin comes up, of course, and it comes down like this, connecting up to the ear. So you can go ahead and add that in. Now what we want to do is actually work on his uniform. Now, his uniform is a Brigadier General uniform, so it has a very high collar. The collar comes all the way up. These were fashioned a lot from the style of the British. So the collar is going to come way up on his neck, almost touching his ear. His shoulders comes down, so you follow your lines that you created. The other line for the other side of the collar is going to come up and it's going to come in. So you want to be sure and have that on both sides. Now the actual shoulder from this side comes down like this. Now if you're at home following along, this is where it might get a little tricky. Just take your time with me and follow each step, okay? The first thing we're going to do is draw a line coming down like this from the collar. It looks like a giant Y, okay? Once you have that, start back down here at the bottom, draw up and down like that. Once you have this line created, what you want to do is you want to show the fold in his uniform. So it's going to be like that, okay? It folds out and it's buttoned. Now on these uniforms you have buttons here and a button here, and the strap comes forward, so you're going to have to draw those in. Zebulon Pike, he explored a lot, like I said earlier, out in the West. He's more popular actually out in the West, in Colorado and places like that. Pike's Peak and these areas that were found on his expeditions, and Louisiana Purchase, he was involved with that. He even did some stuff, I think, with Lewis and Clark. So he's a very important person in our history. He went out and documented different areas of our country back when we were just forming as a country, or just have formed. So we're going to draw now the lines of his collar. I hope you've been following along with me. Basically what I've done is on each side of his shoulders I've drawn the cords that come down from the uniform, And then I've added, of course, the 2 buttons here along with the lines, and then on his uniform here we have the lines coming out. His neck is actually covered with this cloth that's part of the uniform. Now what we're going to do, we're going to actually work on the buttons. There's more buttons coming down this way of on his chest, so we're going to put a few more in there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now off of these buttons are these lines that come out, just like this. Now, looks like we have something that sort of resembles Zebulon Pike here. We really want to focus on taking our time and building from the ground up. So like I said earlier, we have these pencils, and what we're going to do now is add some detail in here. Now if you were to be able to see on these pencils, you'd notice there's numbers. So this is a this is an HB pencil. That means it's right in the middle. B is dark, H is light. That's right in the middle on the scale. Here's a 4B pencil. We know that's pretty dark. This one is a 8B pencil, so this is really dark. This goes beyond what we're looking for, but that's great. Looks like this one here is a 6B, and then of course we have a 2B. So this is right a little bit lighter on the scale. I want to start actually with something very dark, so I'm going to choose the 8B pencil. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to go in here, and I remember the painting that we saw at the beginning. There's a lot of dark lines and shapes and shadows. You can't even really see a lot of him because of this, and that's what I want to do. I want to color in all the areas that's going to be really dark, which is going to be most of him really. You have a pencil at home, you can follow along with this. You really don't even need to have these types of fancy pencils. You can use a regular pencil. How hard you press down really determines how intense the hue will be. Hue meaning, you know, the color of the graphite is dark and light, so the darker the hue is better, and you can get that effect if you push down really hard. Now you want to leave some lines where light reflects. Now you notice I'm really just sketching this in, okay? And that's really what you want to do. You just want to color in these areas, and the areas like the buttons and things, we want to leave those. We don't want to color on top of those. Now as of right now, this doesn't look like much, but once I start applying the color, you can see. Now I've seen a lot of students do something similar to what I'm doing here, or what I'm going to be doing here, and what that is they will sketch in something using their pencil, and we call it shadowing, right? We shadow in something, and then they'll actually take their finger and they'll smudge it, and they'll take it and go like this and smudge those lines, and that is something that a lot of students do, and that's awesome. That is exactly what we're trying to get here, is that effect. With water though, of course, here in a minute. But doing that, there's a thing called a smudge stick you can get. It's basically a wrapped up, very hard piece of paper that's been folded over and over and over. And you can get that from any art supply store, and you don't have to use your finger. They're not very much. They're not that expensive at all. I think they're 79 cents a piece or something. They're 79 cents a piece, of course, because you can use them up pretty fast. I cut it on his nose a little bit there. Now these pencils are great because you can erase with them. That's something that you're going to do a lot if you follow this workshop. So I'm going to darken in the background just a little bit. Now once I do this, I'm actually going to pull in a lighter color pencil for the rest. Now notice I'm just coloring in the background. It doesn't look like much right now. Hopefully it will in a second. Now for his hair, if you've looked at the painting and remember the painting earlier, his hair is also very dark. You can't really see a lot from those paintings and those early images of Zebulon Pike, but we want to just pull the effect off of the best we can to make it resemble him. Okay, he's a big part of our county's history, and it's important to know who he is. So we're going to color in the eyes a little bit. Now I've colored in everything now with this 8B pencil that I want to use, very dark lines. Now I'm actually going to go and use a lighter one. This is an HB pencil. For the HB pencil, this is where I want to put in some detail around the face. So he's got shadowing coming in from the opposite side of his body here, his head. And this shadowing is important. We want to try to make this resemble the portrait as much as we can. I'm even going to add some up in the hair and maybe on his collar as well. His collar is actually red, okay, so we're not using color for this, but we can still pull that effect off a little bit just by darkening in some areas. So I'm going to darken in a little bit on the fold of his collar and up here, and then of course we want to add a little bit up top on his forehead as well. Okay. He does have a little bit of a chin structure that we want to pull in, so we'll add that in there. And I think we've just about got to the point now where we're going to use the water. But before we do that, I really want to make sure that this back area is very, very dark when we go to color it in. The paintings, every single painting that I saw of Zebulon Pike from this era used a very, very dark background, and they did that because they wanted the viewer, whoever saw the painting, to really focus on the subject. So in this case, of course, it's Zebulon Pike, but if you've ever seen very old paintings of different folks in our country's history, such as Washington or other people, then you know that they use very dark backgrounds in a lot of those early paintings. So we're going to make sure that area is good and dark, and we're also going to make sure that the area down here below the collar is good and dark. So we're going to get that colored in as well. And now that we've done that, what we're going to do, now you at home, if you follow along with me, trying to draw Mr. Zebulon Pike here, you can use your finger and you can smudge some of this out with your finger. That's a very good technique to use, and you get good effects by it. What I'm going to do, I'm going to be using a little bit of water. So I'll take thank you, producer Brad, for creating this nice water container for us. And we're going to be using a brush. So that's the two tools we're going to be using. Now, if you have an aqua brush, you can use that. A lot of people don't have those laying around though. So I'm going to get my brush wet, and I'm going to actually go in now, and I'm going to start to pull out this graphite. And you can see what's going to start happening. It's going to darken. Now this darkens quite a bit, but when it dries, it'll actually go back to a lighter hue. And now I'm going to make sure that this background is really nice and dark. Make sure I don't take too much of his nose out while I do it. Now you can get this same effect at home by using your finger and smudging. Smudging is a great technique that you can use. So once we actually get this colored in nice and dark, what we'll do is I'll speed through this really fast and show you, and hopefully at the end you can see how things come together. Okay, so as you can see, using this really blends in those colors well. Now this is totally different than smudging, but at the same time, you can get this effect by doing that at home. You really can. Now I'm pulling this color up. The good thing about it is using watercolor paper, you can pull color out of what you've already laid down. So if I've colored in this section, I can grab some water and I start to pull that graphite out, and you can see what happens. Now, one thing that I've noticed while I was doing this is that the graphite actually moves differently in certain ways, because the more water you add, of course, like with watercolor, the more intense the color gets. But the neat thing about it is that you can actually get another area wet again and then go back to that area and pull graphite out of there. Now that's exactly what this is. This is graphite, but it's they've somehow manufactured this so it acts as watercolor. Now there's some shine right here from the light, but if I pull this up like this, you can see that the entire area down at the bottom is much darker. Now I really like this effect of having it darkened in, so what I'm going to do is actually pull again one of these darker pencils. If I can find my 8B, that would be awesome. This will work really good. This is a 6B. That might, well, this one, here we go. Now what I'm going to do, you can see how I've already colored this section in. Now this is wet. This area is all wet right here. But I can still, though, even with that area being wet, color over top of it. It's going to pull that pigment the graphite out of the pencil and actually start laying it down on the paper around it. So it doesn't matter if your surface area is wet, you can go ahead and do this. It's perfectly fine. So you can see what I'm doing now. I like the way that the background pulls out the features and really brightens it up. I guess that's why the original person who did the painting we saw did it that way, because it makes sense. So I'm going to do that too. I'm going to add some more dark behind this drawing, and see, that's the area that's wet now. We're going into that, so it actually pulls that pigment right out and makes it nice and dark. So we're going to do that again. We're going to actually continue this. We're going to continue this up above his head. You at home can do this. Push down hard on your pencils. Now, if you do have access to some of these pencils that you can use water with, then by all means try it with this. It's a fun medium to play around with. Watercolor is probably my favorite, really, because of that. Just because you can change things. You can go back in and rework a certain area. You can make it, move the pigment around, even if it's already been laid down within a reasonable amount of time. You can't do a watercolor drawing or painting and let it set for a day and then go back to it and expect it to, once you get it wet again, to be able to do certain things. Now, it will move around within a reasonable time. I've done certain drawings where it's set for a little bit, but I've also was using thicker paper, so that helps a lot. So the thicker the paper, watercolor paper, then really the more you can do later on with it. You can go back and actually change stuff around a lot. So we've pretty much come to this point now with our Zebulon Pike drawing that we can say that we've created a likeness of the painting. Is it exactly like the painting that we saw earlier? I'd say maybe not, but I can tell that is Zebulon Pike. It is a cartoon / illustrated version of him. That works. I think it works really well. I mean, I can tell who it is. There's things that I'd like to have done if we had more time with this maybe, but for the purpose of getting an idea of how to draw a portrait and getting an idea of how to draw features and use our techniques such as the circle method and such to do that, I think this works really well. You can keep adding details and reworking areas as much as you want. That's the best thing about this medium, is that you can continue to work it over and over. It's also one of the worst things about this medium, because if you're a perfectionist or you critique your work a lot, then you're probably going to go back and make changes a whole lot to it, and you'll probably never really be done with it. So there we go. Now also remember to always sign your drawings, put your names on it, so everybody knows who did it and when and all that good stuff. So Pike County and Pikeville, we could thank this guy right here. Well, not this cartoon version, of course, but Zebulon Pike for coming through our area on one of his expeditions and actually finding our area and being in this area being named after him. We should be aware of our history. I think it's important. I think we should know why things are the way they are and why certain things have certain names. Like, for instance, Wolf Pit, the creek I grew up on. But that's a whole other tale for a whole other time. So thank you so much for tuning in today. I'd love to see your work. Send it to me. You can post it on eplingillustrations@gmail. Go to my website. There's links there. I'll show it on next time when we air. I'll show your drawing. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Pike TV, for making this available for our area and our viewers. And until next time, I'm Christopher Epling, and keep drawing.